This course traces the history of AI through the papers that changed the field over time. This lecture is paper 2 in the sequence, set in 1955, and it focuses on Dartmouth Proposal by McCarthy, Minsky, Rochester, and Shannon. By this point in the timeline, the field has already moved beyond computing machinery and intelligence from 1950. This lecture shows what changed next and why the historical sequence matters. In this video, we move through the founding conjecture of AI, the early AI research agenda, the founding group and summer workshop plan, what the founders wanted AI to study, McCarthy on language and intelligence, application, why the paper still matters, and summary, why this paper mattered. First, we place the paper in its historical moment. Then, we teach the core ideas, and finally, we show how it changes the direction of later AI work. Keep in mind that the next lecture moves to the perceptron in 1958, so this paper should be understood as one step in a larger historical chain. The Dartmouth Proposal makes a bold claim: every part of learning or intelligence might be described precisely enough that a machine could simulate it. That is historically important, because it turns intelligence from a philosophical mystery into a research program. If the process can be described, maybe it can be engineered. For example, a simple example is speech recognition. Once we can describe the patterns in spoken language precisely enough, a machine can be trained to detect and reproduce them. What this example shows is that the paper is really making an engineering claim. Intelligence becomes something researchers can try to model, test, and build. This matters because it gives the field a founding hypothesis. Intelligence may be something machines can simulate, rather than something forever reserved for humans. Once that is clear, the next step is the early AI research agenda, because that extends the paper's argument in a more concrete direction. The paper does not only name a field, it also lays out an early research agenda covering language, abstraction, neural nets, calculation, self-improvement, and creativity. That matters because it shows the field began with a menu of technical problems, not just a slogan about smart machines. For example, think of a modern AI lab whiteboard listing language models, robotics, planning, learning, and creative generation. The Dartmouth agenda plays that same role for the 1950s. What this example shows is that Dartmouth was not just announcing AI. It was defining the first cluster of research problems that the field should attack. This matters because it turns a bold hypothesis into a research program that later AI work can actually pursue. Once that is clear, the next step is the founding group and summer workshop plan, because that extends the paper's argument in a more concrete direction. The proposal is organizational as well as intellectual. It tries to gather a small group of researchers for a focused summer workshop on the new AI problem. The deeper point is that AI started as a collaborative research agenda, with a deliberate attempt to bring different technical perspectives into one room. For example, a modern example would be a university creating a new research institute and inviting specialists from different fields to define the first shared problems together. What this example shows is that the field was built intentionally, by creating a space where different approaches to intelligence could be compared and developed together. This matters because the history of AI is not only a story of ideas, it is also a story of how researchers organized a new field around those ideas. Once that is clear, the next step is what the founders wanted AI to study, because that extends the paper's argument in a more concrete direction. The attached research notes show that the founders already saw AI as a broad program, not one single method. Reading those notes together makes it clear that early AI already combined logic, learning, information theory, and creativity under one umbrella. For example, one founder focused on reliable computation, another on neural learning, on originality, and another on language and reasoning. What this example shows is that AI did not begin with one dominant technique. It began as a bundle of competing but related ideas about how machine intelligence might work. This matters because it shows how wide the ambitions of early AI were from the very beginning. Once that is clear, the next step is McCarthy on language and intelligence, because that extends the paper's argument in a more concrete direction. McCarthy argues that language matters because intelligence needs a way to represent ideas, form conjectures, and reason about progress. His point is that higher-level intelligence cannot come only from trial and error at the sensory level. It also needs symbolic structure and language-like reasoning. For example, a useful example is an AI assistant planning a task. It has to name objects, track steps, and test possible solutions, not just react blindly to raw input. What this example shows is why language became central to AI. It provides the structure needed for abstraction, reasoning, and self-monitoring. This matters because it points toward later traditions in symbolic AI, formal languages, and reasoning systems. Once that is clear, we can pull the full paper together and see why its historical impact lasted. A useful application is to compare this proposal to the launch of a modern AI research institute. If a university or lab were creating a brand new field today, it would need a founding claim, a first list of priority problems, and a group of researchers who can work across different methods. That is exactly what the Dartmouth Proposal provides. The founding conjecture says machine intelligence may be buildable. The research agenda turns that conjecture into concrete problems like language, abstraction, neural nets, and self-improvement. The workshop plan shows that the field was being organized on purpose, not discovered by accident. And the founder statements make it clear that AI began as a broad program combining logic, learning, information theory, and creativity. So the application is not just that this paper came early, what it looks like when a field moves from an idea to an organized research program. It also sets up the next historical move, because the following lecture turns to the perceptron in 1958. In the overall history of AI, Lecture 2 matters because Dartmouth Proposal from 1955 gives the field one of its early conceptual foundations. This lecture worked through the founding conjecture of AI, the early AI research agenda, the founding group, and summer workshop plan, what the founders wanted AI to study, McCarthy on language and intelligence, application, why this paper mattered in AI history, and summary, why this paper mattered. The key historical point is that this is where AI starts to look like a real field, rather than a single provocative question. The paper states a founding hypothesis, converts it into a concrete research agenda, and shows how the first researchers planned to collaborate around it. That is why Dartmouth matters so much. It gives AI not just an idea, but an organized starting program. From here, the next step in the course is the perceptron in 1958, which continues the timeline from this foundation.